My name is Summer Duran, and I'm going to do slam poetry for you all today. So for those of you who have never, heard or experienced slam poetry, it's a very interactive art. It's spoken word, and by that I mean that I'm not just going to perform at you. You can also express if you feel anything when I say something. You can snap. You can also be silent if you want to, but the positive feedback is always appreciated. That being said, there are a few things that I need to tell you before I recite the poem. There are two words that we must all understand. One is exoticism, which is the rendering of a human being as exotic or of a distant foreign country, attractive or striking because they are colorful or out of the ordinary. They're not ordinarily encountered, and it is a term that is often used in reference to plants and animals. Fetishism is the second word. It is the likening of a person to a fetish, a fixation, an obsession, a compulsion, a fad. It's another term that's used to refer to an object and not a human being. The first time I realized that my experiences with intimacy had largely been through a lens of exoticism, I wrote this poem. There had always been an indefinable worry that when a love interest told me he'd never seen anyone like me, I would wonder, what did he mean by that? My twin sister looks like me, my little sister looks like me, and my mother looks like me. Was I supposed to be proud of being so different? And this anxiety makes it difficult to navigate a sphere of romance. I can never decide if I'm being complimented or etherealized, and even if the intentions are good, the consequences are often otherizing, and as a result, they're also often dehumanizing. I'm made to be some sort of forbidden fruit, accessed through a black market, and made for consumption. Now, that may seem like hyperbole, but it's a real concern, and it's empirically valid. All women in America have experienced disproportionate pressure to navigate the dynamics of being unwantedly sexualized and lusted after. But women of color have the added pressure of reconciling a history of racism and the dehumanization it incurred with its current manifestations in insidious and prejudiced language and practices. This poem is my exploration of that idea and how I can learn to love as a woman, as a biracial woman, and as a feminist, in spite of these anxieties. And now I'm going to recite the poem for y'all. Same old thing, yeah, you know that's boring. American, you know I had to cop that foreign. American, you know I had to cop that foreign. American, you know I had to cop that foreign. I don't see myself that way. I see myself as red, white, and blue as the people who tell me to go back to my country when I never left in the first place. When the subcontinent my forehead has written on it is as foreign to me as I am to them. I see myself as an American-born U.S. citizen. So it is hard to recognize that I am the fetishized, exoticized version of the girl he will probably marry. I am the Muckney Curry redaction of the beauty standard his parents want, but would never arrange for him. I am the groceries he got from the ethnic supermarket his friends told him to try out sometime. I am the spice he needed to add a little flavor to his life, a little bite to his bed. Our babies would be plagued with my full-body brown birthmark blemish. They would be covered from head to toe in my pigment, my phenotype all over them. Their grandparents left wondering, God, why are those black genes so dominant? They were recessive 200 years ago. And then I think, maybe I'm just blowing this all out of proportion. Maybe he really does love me for me. Perhaps he thinks I'm funny and witty, clever and charming and adorable. I am pretty adorable. Maybe he adores me, and my skin is just an accessory. Perhaps he's willing to give up on his junior to raise a mama's boy by skin tone, a chocolate and vanilla swirl heavy on the chocolate. Maybe he's not obsessed with the cocoa. Maybe he's in love with it. Or maybe I'm the web browser he always has to clear from his history. Loving him makes me want to clear my history. Makes me want to be all blonde and olive, all fair and rosy. I love him enough to want to be antithetical to everything that is myself, to trade in this pigment for something that would blend better. I want to feel his fingers in my hair without thinking they're driven by the exoticism tattooed to his fingertips. I want to listen to him call me beautiful without hearing unique. I want to know that he loves me without having to wonder why. I want to be his future without being his fetish. Thank y'all.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Anushi Khan.
Leave my footprints on the sands of time. No, there was something bad and something that I left behind. When I leave this world, I leave no regrets. Leave something to remember so they won't forget I was here. I was here, I did, I've done everything that I wanted, and it was more than I thought it would be. I will leave my mark so everyone will know I was here. I wanna say I lived each day until I died, and I know that I am something in somebody's life. The hearts I have touched will be the proof that I leave, that I made a difference, and this world will see I was here. I lived, I loved, I was here. I did, I've done everything that I wanted, and it was more than I thought it would be. I will leave my mark so everyone will know I was here. I lived, I loved, I was here. I did, I've done everything that I wanted, and it was more than I thought it would be. I will leave my mark so everyone will know I was here. louder.
That's meal.
Chipotle.
Let me poet speak at the White House. Her words hit me hard like a light bulb. Fictitious depictions of girls must die out. If we want to live in a world that triumphs, I am just talking about loving the femme. I ain't talking about nobody else. Toxic masculinity has to end. I'm just talking about loving ourselves. You can't catch me singing these words in a black, otherwise futurist female t-shirt. Like, hey, me, I got something to say. Gender construction just get in the way. I've been playing drums since I was like 8. The future is female, that future is great.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Own It's Executive Director, Soraya Eid.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Own It 2017. Woo woo! Can we get another round of applause for Summer and Anushe for bringing down the house? That's like my favorite song, so I'm feeling really jazzed right now. So I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for being here today. My name is Soraya Eid, and I'm the Executive Director of this year's Summit. Before we get into the day, we have a few supporters we would like to thank. First, thank you to Georgetown University and our wonderful president, John DeJoya, for supporting the conversations you'll hear here today. We would also like to thank Eric Smolson, Stacy Kerr, Lisa Krim, Sophie Kim Goldmacher, Dr. Marcia Chatlin, Mary Haynes, Jeffrey Bible, and Russell Gordon for all of their generous support and guidance. This year, we are also especially thankful for our 15 on-campus sponsors. Your support blew us away, and this day would not be possible without your generosity. We are incredibly fortunate to have so many offices and organizations here at Georgetown who so eagerly support women and female leadership. Truly, thank you so much. Thank you also to our corporate sponsors for their support. We are thrilled to have you. You can find a complete list of our sponsors in our program. We also owe a huge thank you to our 70 volunteers, 90 speakers, and our remarkable team for putting together Own It 2017. It's pretty amazing that a team of entirely undergraduate women is behind this whole operation. I would also like to thank you guys, the volunteers, for always showing up, the attendees. I would like to thank the attendees for always showing up full of energy and with an open mind. It means the world to us. So, for a little backstory on this initiative, our fearless co-founders, Helen Brosnan and Kendall Ciesmeyer, the two coolest women I know. They're sitting here in the front row, crying a little already. They had a conviction 4 years ago that a women's movement needed to start here at Georgetown, and they were right. With this vision, they built the Own It initiative from the ground up. And now, 4 years later, we are here at our 4th annual summit. We have hosted hundreds of speakers, thousands of attendees, and what has resulted is beyond our dreams and expectations. Seeing the support and momentum that Own It has garnered is truly inspiring. It goes to show that this is a space worth having. The conversations that Own It fosters are now more important than ever. The women of Own It are here to remind you that the future is still female. We are visible, we are strong, and we are not going anywhere. We want everyone here today to feel welcome. Every year that we host this summit, we commit to pushing ourselves and our strategy to be increasingly inclusive. We are always working to be better. This is especially important in our current political climate, where women are facing persistent misogyny, both online and in person. But Own It believes in this university, in this city, and in this country. Our movement is based on values, not politics. But what a better way to participate in the resistance than to spend a day with a community of trailblazing, open-minded women and men who are taking charge. As we all know, no feminist is perfect. In fact, no human is perfect. So we must continue to educate ourselves, especially on the intricacies of our intersecting identities. We must continue to listen to and learn from those different from us. Let's do that here today in a comfortable and welcoming environment. Wherever you lie on the gender spectrum, your contribution to advancing women's rights is incredibly valuable. This is just the beginning, and we hope you leave here today with a renewed dedication to fighting for what you believe in and a re-energized drive to pursue your passions. Now, one of my favorite things about Own It is the people I've met through this effort. I started as a freshman volunteer and have continued working on this summit ever since. I've worked alongside strong, powerful, intelligent women who have shaped my time here at Georgetown. I'm forever grateful for their friendship and their support. They are a group of proud feminists and change makers who are always there to support and lift each other up. It's really beautiful. I'm so thankful for this community of women, including Helen and Kendall, who continue to remain super involved and supportive of the Own It initiative. And now, it is my absolute honor to welcome to the stage two bold and passionate leaders, two of my personal role models, Own It 2017's remarkable co-chairs, Sarah Clements and Sienna Mori. Now, if you've been to the Own It Summit before, which many of you have, but also welcome to the newbies, you know about this next tradition, so bear with us. Sometimes a raised hand and a loud voice can be our most powerful tools. So for tradition's sake, we ask you all to raise your hands now, because we are declaring March 18th, 9:51 a.m., the official time to start owning it. We ask you to put away your doubts and fears, cares and concerns for one day, and to open up yourselves to the experience that lies ahead. Thank you all so much for being here today. It means the world to us, and I hope you enjoy the best day of the year. Thank you.
Welcome to Own It 2017! It's so great to see so many new and familiar faces in the audience. My name is Sienna Mori.
And I'm Sarah Clements, and we are co-chairs of this year's Own It Summit.
Sarah and I have worked together for 3 years now. You can say she is my partner in crime. And we are so thrilled for you to experience this day with us.
This year, our theme is inspired by the Susan B. Anthony quote, which reads, "Educate, agitate, organize must be our war cry." The fights for women's leadership, gender equity, and feminism are eternal struggles. And all of us here today stand on the shoulders of giants who have gotten us where we are. Many of the speakers that we have here today are some of those giants.
These are the women who are truly leading the cause. And although we may not always see them, they're the backbone of the work, and they're leading the way in STEM, the arts, journalism, media, and much more. One of these women is Liza Donnelly, a cartoonist and writer for The New Yorker and CBS News. Liza has been an avid supporter of Own It since day one, and we are so excited for her to be live cartooning our event today. We can't wait to see her illustrations. Thank you so much for being here. As you hear from such incredible women like Liza, challenge yourselves to listen to each other's stories and broaden your perspectives. In doing so, I have no doubt that we will walk away together inspired and with a renewed understanding of how we can own it in our own communities and beyond.
This is the 4th Own It Summit here at Georgetown, and our original mission to bridge the gap between female leaders of the 21st century and those of us who admire them is still holding strong. Our biggest hope for this day is that Own It can help you on whatever journey you find yourself on, whether that be searching for a first job out of school, changing paths midway through your career, or looking to be newly inspired. We hope that we can help.
Now take a second to look around. We have in this room hundreds of attendees from over a dozen universities and from all across our own campus. We have professors, undergrads, DC professionals, graduate students, and renowned leaders who have come from all different walks of life, and we thank you deeply for diving into this day with us. But before we kick off today's incredible event, we also owe a very special thank you to Georgetown's own president, President John DeGioia, for fostering and supporting the conversations you will hear today.
President DeGioia, yes. President DeGioia represents Georgetown as a he-for-she University Impact Champion, and we are so proud to call him our favorite Mambassador.
Now, please join us in welcoming to the stage President John DeGioia.
Well, thank you, Sarah and Sienna, for those very kind words of introduction, and thank you to Soraya for her leadership of this summit. And I wish to offer our appreciation, congratulations to you and to the entire Own It student team for all of your efforts in bringing us together today. The community that you have built, the conversations you have ignited, have enriched our university in incalculable ways, and we are all very grateful. I also wish to express our deep appreciation to Summer and Anushe for their terrific performances just a moment ago. To all of our speakers, many of whom are members of the Georgetown community, returning to the Hilltop, I want to thank you for your presence and for sharing your perspectives with us. To all the members of the Georgetown community, thank you for your contributions to making this Own It Summit such a success. And finally, to all of you who are here today, thank you for joining us. Your presence, your participation, your willingness to come together in conversation and dialogue embodies the spirit of Own It. This movement and its reach to schools across our city, our nation, and our world is extraordinary, and what has been accomplished over 4 years is truly remarkable. When Kendall and Helen, who as you know are right here with us today, first brought us all together in 2014, they identified an opportunity to wrestle with the questions defining our moment, to develop our sense of ourselves, to identify the contributions that we are called to make by engaging these questions with others. Now, in this annual gathering, we have a place, a setting for our community to come together alongside leaders who are meeting the challenges of this moment with courage, determination, and with extraordinary leadership. Your presence and your participation today is a testament to the strength of our university's commitment, our students, faculty, staff, alumni, our partners, our friends, to fostering a sense of inclusiveness, a sense of the value of the inherent human dignity of each and every member of this community, to enable us to foster a diverse and inclusive campus culture in which all of our students, in which each of us are able to learn, to grow, to thrive. Own It in bringing together a diverse set of leaders with the next generation of leaders and providing a forum and a framework to help our students in the hard work of formation reflects the very best of our community. I'm profoundly grateful to have this opportunity to be with you this morning to express my warmest welcome and my best wishes to each of you, and I wish you the very best for a wonderful day. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Emma Gray, Dr. Zainab Chaudhry, Sarah McBride, and Megan Smith.
Get this party started. I'm Emma Gray. I'm the executive women's editor at the Huffington Post, and I'll be your moderator today. And these are our wonderful panelists. Right here is Dr. Zainab Chaudhry. She's the spokeswoman and Maryland Outreach Manager for the Council on American Islamic Relations, which is the nation's largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization. She also regularly comments on social justice issues and has appeared in Time, CNN, The Guardian, New York Times, Washington Post, Al Jazeera, incredibly prolific. And here's Sarah McBride, the National Press Secretary for the Human Rights Campaign. Sarah serves also on the board of directors of Equality Delaware, which is Delaware's primary LGBT advocacy organization. And before HRC, Sarah worked for Governor Jack Markell and former Attorney General Beau Biden. And she also became the first openly trans person to address a major party political convention when she spoke at the 2016 DNC. So lucky to have her here. And finally, we have Megan Smith, who served as the United States' third ever Chief Technology Officer. In her role, Smith and her team focused on the use of technology policy, data, and innovation to advance the future of the nation. It's a big job. She also served as the vice president of Google, leading new business development for 9 years, and later at Google X. And in 2012, she co-founded the Malala Fund. So, thanks for being here, guys. So education is a pretty big topic here. We'll just dive in. Just to start us off, what role for all of you has education played, both formal education and informal?
I'll start off. It's incredible because from an early age, being a daughter of immigrants, education was so deeply stressed upon my brothers and myself. My parents migrated from Pakistan to the United States, and I was born a couple years afterwards. And one of the reasons why my parents migrated to the United States was because they wanted to provide their children with an opportunity to have a better education. And so we always kind of knew that we had to educate ourselves and go to high school and go to college and get a degree. But I think that formal education has influenced my perspective in a way that's very profoundly different than being out in the field, being an activist, interacting with a whole host of individuals and various parts of society. It really changes your perspective. And it's so important to be open-minded about different issues and different ideas, and just constantly be receptive to what you're surrounding yourself with.
I think for me, when I was in college, I came out as transgender. And it was through my experience in school, through the experience of being in an educational environment, that I was able to sort of have the space to self-reflect and to explore who I am as a person. It wasn't just about what I was learning in my classes, what I was learning in textbooks. It was also a period of time that I think I was able to really explore myself. And I think that's incredibly important for folks who are in college right now, is to make sure you're using that opportunity to really not just try to get the formal education, but also use that opportunity to figure out yourself, to figure out who you are before you go out into the broader world, because there's no better time to do that than college. You're in an environment that's usually a little bit safer, a little bit more welcoming, and I think people need to make sure that they're not so focused on the future that they're not really taking the moment to be introspective. And then now that I'm out of school, it's incredibly important for me at least to continue to try to learn about identities and communities that I don't know as much about. Communities that I've maybe been forgetting or ignoring, communities that society may be leaving behind. For instance, I'll put a plug in for making sure that we're exploring and learning more about people with disabilities. So much of our language is filled with rhetoric that unintentionally reinforces stigma against people with disabilities. And so I continually try to keep up to date on what is the most respectful and affirming way to talk about different communities, to talk about different marginalized identities. And that's a form of lifelong education that I encourage everyone to participate in.
Hi. I have been driving a lot for something I've been thinking about as creative confidence. It's something that no matter what topic you're studying, if you could be an active person on that. And so as a kid, I was lucky because not only were my parents pretty active with us on just projects and making things and a lot of fabulous community activism. My dad started the recycling center in Buffalo. My mom started all the bike routes before it was like super popular. They're doing great things. But also what I drive for in this creative confidence is all topics. So not just a lot of times focusing on young women. There's so much stereotype coming at you, telling you that as if there's like technical people and not technical people. You feel that every day. You feel that also you're talking about who's included. And so I was lucky because we had mandatory science fair in school, and our teachers, we had inner city public school, no money, but just rock star entrepreneurial teachers. And so we had to do this. And so if you want to get into tech and digital and engineering, the way to do that is to actually do it. It's just like writing an essay. You have to start in kindergarten with letters and on into paragraphs and up there, the same thing. So practice makes permanent. And so getting people to not leave those out, I was lucky to have that happen for me, which I think is really critically important and continue to drive for that. So we have so many challenges in the world, and so we've got to use all of the tools around for that.
And you all do very different work, but you're all professional communicators in some capacity. And I'm wondering, do you think of yourself as being an educator as part of what you do professionally?
You know, it's interesting because part of my work entails working with the interfaith community and empowering young children to reach beyond, what they think their potential is and look beyond, even far beyond what they think that they're capable of achieving. And, you don't realize that you're educating people or that you're communicating with people. And a lot of times we do it just through body language, right? Like what 70% of how we communicate or more than that is just through body language. And it's fascinating to see the impact that we can have, especially on people who have not been exposed to people who resemble us or who might be from our community or who might be, from our ethnic or religious background, just by virtue of being in that same space. And I think a lot of it is also being comfortable with being in uncomfortable places. A lot of times we, as human beings, we tend to kind of gravitate towards people who are familiar to us or who we're comfortable with. But we learn the most, I think, from people who are different than us. And I think that being in those environments and surrounding ourselves with people who are very different from us can oftentimes open our horizons and just, expose, our own stereotypes and our own biases that we sometimes have, and we don't even realize that we have them sometimes. So it's really been an incredible journey the last few years. I actually was a pharmacist for many, many years, and then I transitioned into activism, nonprofit work.
It's quite a change.
It's quite a change, and it's been an incredible journey. I mean, just being able to connect with people from all walks of life and change perceptions and change stereotypes, it's been really a rewarding journey.
I think empathy is probably the most powerful human emotion. And in my job, I'm certainly a communicator, and I certainly view myself as at least trying to educate folks about LGBTQ identities and LGBTQ equality. But I think at the heart of it, it's trying to make sure we're bridging this empathy divide that I think exists throughout the country right now. And that is done not necessarily through trying to win an argument. It's not done through trying to spout off facts or statistics, which are incredibly important. As someone who worked at a think tank, that was a big part of my job. But I think at the core, it's about telling stories. It's about making sure people understand that behind these conversations are real people who love and laugh, hope and dream, fear and cry just like everyone else. And whether you're Muslim, whether you're trans, whether you're gay, whether you're an immigrant, those elements are so often lost in this conversation. And I think one of the most common threads that exists across the country, whether you voted for Hillary Clinton or whether you voted for Donald Trump, is this notion or this feeling of being unseen. And so I think one of the most powerful political statements that people can make right now is to listen and to make clear that you see people in their pain, that you see people in their plight. And certainly it's not the same plight for everyone, it's not the same pain for everyone, but I think if we do that, I think we can begin to heal the wounds that exist right now in this country.
As a journalist, I think the most that I ever learn is when I sit and I have a conversation with someone and I try to listen and understand their story. And I think that can be an incredibly powerful educational tool. So how do we make sure that we continue to have those conversations and continue to be lifelong learners?
Yeah, we were talking about this a little bit backstage, that all of us are constantly learning. There's this construct of education, which is fabulous, and as you were saying, wonderful places like universities, community colleges, other times in your life when you can reflect in and do a lot of social learning as well as academic learning. But just continuously learning, and for me, I'm focused on how do you unlock more talent and get people to play with all that's there. I'll give you an example. If we were working on the pay gap, and we have this intractable problem that women are paid far less than men all over the world. Women of color, even worse. And so, what do we do about that? Well, today we advocate, we work on policy, we do those things. But there's other tools to use. So an example that came up for us, which sort of shows, in some ways it's a form of learning, but it's an action together and learning and collaboration. Some of the Presidential Innovation Fellows, which was a program that President Obama started with us, kind of entrepreneurs in residence. So think of, techies or design thinkers or user interface design folks, hundreds of them, over 100 have come to government. 2 of them decided to do a program called Hack the Pay Gap. So many of you have phones. You probably got here using maps, yeah? Okay, so the map on your phone is sitting on top of government data. That data is from US Geological Survey, or maybe you check the weather, that's sitting on government data. There's over 200,000 data sets that we were able to release through policy work with President Obama that are now live. What might that data tell us? And so one of the things these guys did was they worked with the Department of Commerce, and Secretary Pritzker released the Midas API. So just like the mapping API that's letting your phone maps work with that data, now there's data about all of the incomes in America, not private personal data, but general trending. Instead of only relying on the amazing think tanks to roll it up and give you their analysis and graphics and PDF, why don't you have a live tool now and just look at your pay gap every day and show it to your boss? And so people made apps for that, right? Cool. So these guys engaged in hackathons. How many people have ever been to a hackathon? Yes? No? Raise your hand. Now that's an issue, right? So everyone in this room, you have an assignment by the time we're here next year, you've been to a hackathon, okay? One of the best ones is June, the National Day of Civic Hacking, over 60 cities. It's a sprint day. You're not going to break into computers. It's a sprint day, and it's all different kinds of people together in a room working on a challenge. And by having a very cross-functional team, you're going to be shocked how fast you can advance potential pilots. Then some of you might actually found companies that do this. So these guys did the Hack the Pay Gap, and they, everything from hundreds of solutions came out that are now becoming products. One of them was a VR experience where you come in and you have to be the manager and deal with different kinds of people who are going to come at you and deal with different bias and who shows up how. Some of them is you have to practice salary negotiation. Very creative idea. Some of it is an e-commerce site that shows up, choose who you are, and the prices start changing based on your gender and race. So you can see and feel what it would feel like to be this other person. One is called Bump Ahead. It's about the pregnancy challenge. When you have a baby, Teen Chen is here, she will know. It's something like 4% loss in your salary every time you have a baby. Why are we doing that? And how do we use a game that people love to play to see what those challenges are? So really thinking different, and how that relates to learning is you can learn in so many different ways, and one of the best ways to learn is actively doing the thing. And so learning how to make anything by doing it together, whether it's in social change across, and use all the different things that we could use in our universe to solve the problems together, including each other.
The idea of using virtual reality as a way to create empathy that we were discussing before.
Right.
I mean,
We've relegated these tools of tech and innovation to a set of people. It's 15-to-1 boy programmers to girl programmers on the TV you watched as kids, still today, right? So you think you don't do this. Did you guys ever see the film Imitation Game? Yes, no, some people? Amazing, Bletchley Park, they saved 11 million lives, shortened World War II by 2 years using heroic engineering. The people there were 2/3 women, including the Duchess of Cambridge's great aunt and grandmother. But you don't think, and you don't see it in the film, that women are very much a technical group of people who have solved extraordinary problems. In fact, women are the first digital programmers in America, nearly lost 70-year-old a story, or Grace Hopper, who invented coding languages. We do these things, we just get dropped out of the stories, but luckily there's things like Hidden Figures coming back. So it matters a lot to be able to do all this work.
Everyone should see that movie
Yeah.
if you haven't. It's so good. Well, how do we make sure, like as individuals, how can we make sure that more of these hidden figures and hidden voices are elevated? And because I think that's a lot of the work that all four of us do, is tapping into communities that might not have been seen all the time, especially in the mainstream, and lifting those voices up. I don't know if any of you have.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is making sure that we consciously make space for the communities whose voices we want to include. One of the things that I struggle with as an activist is being a spokesperson for the nation's largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization. We're constantly speaking on behalf of people, and I have to constantly remind myself that I might be here representing thousands and thousands of women, but each one of those women has a voice, and that voice is her personal narrative. And that each individual's narrative matters, each person's voice matters. And it's so important to make sure that we consciously work to make space at the table for all of those voices to matter equally, for people's perspectives, for their experiences to help shape our perception of the world, our global perception, and our perception of society as we know it. It's just so important because each person brings a different perspective to the table. And there have been so many times when I've been proven wrong, when I've kind of typecast people into like certain boxes, and they've proven me completely wrong. And it's really eye-opening to see that we cheat ourselves out of so much diversity and so much enrichment that we can get from, exposing ourselves to people who are able to express their own personal narratives.
I think there are two shared identities in this room that for the vast majority of people in here leave them feeling like their voice doesn't matter. Obviously, one is folks' gender. But the second common identity that oftentimes I think keeps us quiet is our voices as young people. And I think one of the things that I try to make sure that I remind folks who are young, and I consider myself young still, I'm 26.
That counts.
That counts, yes, good, okay. Thank you. Is that as young people, we have a unique perspective that we can speak from. Because we can speak from a place of history. Not the history that's been written, but the history that's not yet in the books. The fact of the matter is that we will be the ones that write the history books of tomorrow. We'll be the ones that decide who was right and who was wrong in this moment. And elected officials, business leaders, adults, they know that. And so make sure that you understand the gravity of your voice, the gravity of your perspective, because all of us that are young are speaking from a place of history, and adults know that, and that is a powerful, powerful tool, and none of us should ever forget that.
Yes, that deserves a round of applause. I also wonder what the responsibility is of young people, specifically living, in this moment of alternative facts. And I think young people are especially equipped to access information and put information out there, especially through social media, not through these more traditional channels. So how can, young people kind of combat the empathy gap and also the movement kind of against truth and facts that we're seeing from the highest levels of government?
Well, I'll say, I think there's a couple things. I think one of the biggest questions that our generation is going to have to deal with is how do we channel the democratization of media for good and not for ill, right? Right now, we see Twitter is a great place for voices of color, for LGBTQ voices, for women to speak up, but it's also become a place that is a living and breathing comment section that oftentimes gets directed at those of us who do speak out. And so we have to figure out how do we maintain that democratization of media while making sure that people aren't facing harassment or bullying or hate speech that ends up silencing them once again. But I think something that we have started to do, particularly as young folks, is we I think this is, when we see someone say something that's maybe prejudiced or certainly insensitive or ignorant, we think that as an act of solidarity, we should defriend that person. We should cut off our ties with that person. And I think certainly there are instances where not seeing someone who's saying something anti-trans for me on Facebook requires me to sort of defriend or silence that person on my newsfeed because it's an act of self-care. But for those of us who are doing it more as an act of solidarity with other identities, I think we should interrogate whether we're unintentionally reshifting the burden of education back onto the marginalized individual. If we cut off communication with someone who is prejudiced, who is racist, who is transphobic, who is homophobic, who is sexist entirely, and we do that uniformly, then the only people left to educate those individuals are going to be the marginalized folks themselves. And so we need to make sure that we're not shirking our responsibility of standing in solidarity in a sort of seemingly simple, but in the end, sort of faux act of solidarity. So I encourage you, when you see hate speech, step up, speak out, and don't cut off ties. Make sure that you are in it for the long haul to educate people about why they should reevaluate what they're saying and what they're thinking.
You know, so one thing about the internet is it's just us connected. And so we bring all of our greatness and all of our awfulness, right, to it. And so I think that's really great advice. I also think, I met a great 15-year-old in Chicago who has written a tool. She wrote a tool that allowed to help friends. So just like you might have spell check alert you, it alerts you about your language choices when you're about to post. So we have this idea from movies and from the tech sector that artificial intelligence and data science and these things are for self-driving cars, but why wouldn't we use them to stop domestic violence, right? Why are we not using these things for our harder problems? They're much harder than making a car drive itself. And so, which is still hard, but this is harder. Rural child poverty is harder. And so using this stuff in those ways, I think it matters a lot. Also, to the point about youth, I had an incredible conversation once with a guy named Jerry Wiesner, who was President Kennedy's science advisor. He was an MIT president. And he said he worked a lot on nuclear disarmament at various points. And he said at one point, yeah, I don't go to those rallies anymore. And I said, well, you know, why? And he said, you know, there's not enough young people. So know from that, you know, truth that, you know, here's this incredibly accomplished person who relies on you. You know, he relies on you. The generations rely on our youth to fuel new ideas and energy and all that we can be, because you know, what you know is what you know from what you grow up, right? Where you grow up. So you just, you know, you're not constrained. You don't have kind of compliance to things. And so you can bring that. And if you have lots of people from different generations working together, the power of youth, you can do extraordinary things together. And it matters a lot.
I think these are all terrific points. And I think one thing that's also worth pointing out is that to be consciously aware of not normalizing hatred, not normalizing bigotry, especially living in a society, in a climate, in a political climate where we've gotten so accustomed to hearing so much bigoted rhetoric targeting diverse communities that it desensitizes us to some degree, because we're constantly being exposed to the same rhetoric over and over and over. And after a while, we become used to it. But I think being consciously aware of that and actively working to push back against it, maybe it's as simple as doing a mental check when we read something. Does it sound like it's moral? Does it sound like it's ethical? And then if it doesn't, then it could be even something simple as retweeting something that pushes back against intolerance. That in itself is an act of solidarity with the community that's being targeted. It could be as simple as liking something. It could be as simple as posting a comment, but that comment is adding to the voices that are pushing back against that climate that normalizes hatred.
And I want to go back briefly to something that Sarah said about, you know, when the education falls solely on marginalized communities. And I would consider women to be a marginalized community. Sexism, still a reality. And I wonder for all three of you, has there ever been a moment where you have decided that you needed to step back and not be the educator?
I think there have been points when I've said I'm not going to do it. Like you get so tired and you get so frustrated being in that situation where you feel like you have to constantly be that voice to push back against hatred and bigotry, or being, specifically for the Muslim community, constantly being expected to condemn terrorism or acts of terrorism that do not define anything about you or your religion. There have been points when I've said, you know what, I'm just not going to do it anymore. Like I refuse to accept responsibility for having to condemn something that I do not condone and that my religion does not condone. But sometimes it gets to be very frustrating, and you have to kind of find that balance between pushing back against the negative, hateful rhetoric, or like the voices that are demanding that you take ownership of something that you don't want to take ownership of, and staying silent and allowing other voices to kind of speak for you. And I think that that's that balance that we have to kind of find for ourselves.
I feel like I spend most of the day at my job wading through comments of people saying absolutely horrific things about trans folks, and sometimes me in particular, but trans folks generally. And so when I get home and I hop on social media, sometimes the last thing that I want to do is engage with someone who is saying something horrible about people like me. And that's why I sort of said in my previous answer that sometimes stepping out of a situation, removing yourself from a situation, is an act of self-care, and this is obviously a marathon and not a sprint. And so, I think that it's certainly appropriate, which goes to my point of we need people to stand in solidarity. We need to make sure that hate speech doesn't go unaddressed. We need to make sure we're not normalizing that. But the only way we can do that is if we don't completely remove the barrier, or if we don't completely remove the connections we have with other people. If all of my friends defriend someone who posts something transphobic on Facebook, then I'm gonna have no one to stand up for me. And either I'm gonna have to do it, or the hate speech is gonna go unaddressed. And so I think it's definitely important for self-care, but now more than ever, we need to stand up for one another.
Just to wrap it up, before we go to Q&A, just if each of you could tell the audience, like, what's one piece of advice if they want to use education to create social change, to create social good? How do they do it? Megan, would you like to start?
I love what you guys are saying, because it's sort of a team sport to do anything, right? And so sometimes, whether you're speaking or getting your friends to talk, staying connected. We were working on economic issues. We were in Eastern Kentucky on Monday in Appalachia with 35 coal miners who just graduated from Code Boot Camp, working on confidence and new modern skills in an area that I had no idea was one of the strongest areas for aerospace in our country. I didn't know as much of the manufacturing there. So this place of coal can lift into its next thing, and it's such a great example of continuous learning. This engine of Appalachia powered our country. Half of the US still uses coal, and it powered our country, it powered the industrial age. And so this group of amazing Americans there can rise into being part of that kind of future. So I was thinking about how we're connected and that people are themselves, and sort of thinking in an ecosystem way, I think is really useful for you guys. And then two other quick things. One is, one of the things I always do is, instead of trying to fix the hard problem, that's hard, right? That's exhausting. But maybe you can just look around like the venture capitalists do, kind of venture catalyze things, scout and scale. Who's already doing something like you guys, who are doing extraordinary things? Who can you track? And sort of lift them up and join them and start spreading the word and sort of solve things by scouting around and scaling what's working, and that gives us a direction. And just the last thing, we had to do some work with NASA, and so we were down in Florida and went to go to one of the SpaceX launches, and we went by the Pulse nightclub right after the attacks on the way there. And such a devastating moment in our country. And there was a woman there and handed Matthew, who I work with, this little red card, and all it said was, "You matter." And I think that that's the feeling, that's certainly my hope, that all of us can feel that individually and about each other, and then drive for ways to include each other and work together and collaborate again in a team sport.
I think that's a perfect note for us to end on. You matter. Yeah. I think we have time for a bit of Q&A.
That was actually going to be my advice, to don't be afraid to ask questions.
So you can take it right now. If there's...
I was just wondering, I'm in the middle of my career, I'm actually looking for a change, and I feel a calling towards reaching out to these different groups. What's the first steps to getting started if you really feel the call towards that?
You know, it's so interesting you should ask that question, because I went through that myself. I literally woke up one day and I said, this is not what I want to do anymore. I was working as a critical care pharmacist, and I transitioned into nonprofit activism. And I think a part of it is just surrounding yourself or reaching out to organizations and groups who are doing the work that you're interested in. I literally showed up at the door of my organization, the front door of their national headquarters in Washington, D.C., and I knocked on the door, and our director for Islamophobia, countering Islamophobia, opened the door, and he's like, yes, can I help you? And I had no idea what I wanted to ask him. I had no idea where to begin. I didn't know the first thing about activism, but just being in that space and connecting with folks who can help educate you more about, you know, what the different nuances are about the issues that you care about, can help you kind of figure out where you fit and what you want to do. And a lot of it's just about being able to connect with those organizations and those individuals that are doing that work already. For me personally, that's what helped me kind of make that transition.
I think to sort of build off of that, I think there's also one step right before, which is to make sure that you're doing your homework and you're doing your research and you're making sure that you're learning sort of what I talked about at the beginning. How do you talk about these issues? What are the words we use? What are the challenges a different community is facing? All of that information is at our fingertips. And we shouldn't let that pass us by when it's so easy to do a little bit of reading before we go to a meeting, before we go and meet with an advocacy group or an advocate in your area. Make sure you're taking the time to educate yourselves. You're constantly learning about different communities that you may not be thinking about every single day when you are passionate about, say, gender equity or LGBTQ rights or racial justice. What is the community you're leaving behind in that? And then looking things up and doing your homework before you engage in that work.
Part of like the knocking on the door, exactly, part of knocking on the door, I love that as advice, because one of the things that's a little bit hard is to go, like just call someone for coffee and then just talk to them. It'd be easier to go visit you in your classroom, and then you would understand the context of it. So sometimes just asking if you can shadow a little bit or show up in different environments. And there's networks operating all over any community. So there might be faith-based networks. There might be different kinds of professional networks. If you go to meetup.com, you might find, you know, a bunch of tech meetups or hiking meetups or whatever kinds of things, and get into their physical environment and shadow and sort of see what that's about, what is that like, and then start asking them questions based on that context. It can help you a lot.
Any other questions? I see.
Like, what sorts of things can a woman bring to the table in a job that like a man can't bring? So like what sorts of sentiments, ideas, different like stuff like that?
I think women can bring their stories and their lived experiences, and there are just certainly certain things that you will have experienced in your life that maybe your male peers have not. And I think that I would caution against being too reductionist about, what women can do and what special skills women have. But I think it's more about us all sharing our individual stories and making sure that our voices are heard. And when there are voices that have traditionally not been heard, those need to be at the table.
Yeah, go
ahead, please.
Okay, the research shows that the more diverse a team is, just breadth, gender, race, experience, geography, wherever, that you just have better results. You have better financial results. So it's not just a social inclusion, it's a prosperity inclusion. Whatever you're trying to work on, you're going to have better financial results, better products, better results, better achievement of whatever impact you're trying to make. And so there's a woman named Laura Liswood, and she does great training. She wrote a book called The Loudest Duck, and she talks about style compliance. And one of the things she said is you learn from grandma and grandpa what you're supposed to do. So you might have heard squeaky wheel gets the grease, so you do that. Or maybe she has this riff. Maybe you're in Japan and you heard the nail that stands up will be hammered down, so you do that. Or maybe you're in China and grandma and grandpa said the loudest duck will be shot. Or maybe you're a woman on the planet and grandma and grandpa, when you were little, said, if you don't have anything to say that's nice, then don't speak. So you walk in a room, you got a wheel, a nail, a duck, and a nice. The wheel's talking, what do you do? Right, so that's the rooms we're walking into constantly. And so it's not really about any particular dimension, it's about the breadth of dimension and having everybody contributing there and sort of changing the room so it's more fun, more inviting, and really expansive, and bringing stories and all the different pieces to it.
I think sort of to Emma's point, I think oftentimes if we start trying to get into specific skills, we can start falling into stereotypes and things like that. But I think there's certainly the saying that I know Emily's List Victory Fund always says that if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. And so particularly when you're in policy spaces or if you're at a major organization that's providing any kind of service, if women aren't at the table, it's too easy to craft policy that ignores unique or specific needs or challenges. And then I'd also say, because this is this is my constant refrain, is that we also bring a unique perspective, though, as young people. I mentioned the history perspective, but also all of us, because of our age, are really impatient. And we are told oftentimes that we need to temper ourselves. We need to allow change to occur at a slow pace, allow conversations to occur at a slow pace. We should not lose our impatience. We should feel that, as Dr. King said, fierce urgency of now. And that urgency that we feel as women or as young people, as someone with a marginalized identity, that is important in any conversation to make sure that it's moving, and it's moving at a pace that is going to actually make change as soon as possible. Because when you ask LGBTQ people, when you ask women, when you ask people of color, when you ask Muslims or immigrants to sit by and allow a long conversation to occur, you're asking them to spend their one life without respect or dignity. And that's too much to ask of any person.
So include yourself in the conversation. And thank you all for being amazing. And thank you. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Iman Muhammad.
Hello. For 25 years, I lived behind a wire, a fence, and concrete borders. The concrete borders were permanently closed and rarely open. Closed under occupation, closed under construction, and closed under siege. For one reason or another, the border had always been closed, and life in Gaza had always been stuck in reverse. But I wasn't an exception. My life was the reflection of another 1.5 million Palestinians who lived in Gaza Strip. They all struggled through life under the occupation, under siege, with all the limitation, but they also struggled with the culture and the boundaries and the taboos that Gaza had always had. Through that struggle, they shared a universal feature. They all had interesting stories of where they came from, what they dreamed to be. Mine was simple, but the exception was when all my classmates had a long list of that they want to be a doctor, a nurse, a dancer, a scientist. I had a very short one. I only wanted to be a photojournalist. As I grew older, the list of why I can't be a photojournalist became longer. So many reasons, and so many points, and so many rejections, and so many no's. But they all came down to one, that I couldn't be a photojournalist because I'm a woman. And because someone, somewhere in Gaza, decided that women photojournalists is not a decent job for a local woman to have. As I was so determined to change their mind, to make them get convinced that I can do it, that slowly vanished. I was lucky to be raised by a single mom who showed me life with no limits, despite all the boundaries and all the taboos. When I turned 19, I decided that I can push it further. After becoming a reporter who's only the reporter who would always go on assignment and forget to let the photographer know. So I would always take the photo, and my editors would be obligated to push the photos that I took with my articles. In that way, I found a back door to becoming a photojournalist. I wasn't ready enough to confront the community and to say that I'm actually gonna go against what you said. So I was very comfortable with that back door. Till in 2008, the first war in Gaza started. And I realized that this is my first big story. It's gonna be war in home, war in Gaza. So I decided that I'm gonna play nice. I'm gonna go with my colleagues. I'm gonna respect what they say about me not being able to be a photojournalist just because I'm a she. And I'm only gonna cover for 1 week, if the war lasts for 1 week. And then I'm gonna go home. And so I was with my colleagues moving around and listening to one of them that I've always considered like a big brother to me. He was very disappointed. He told me how I disobeyed, how I didn't listen, how I disrespected, and how I went into the man's pants. And I became a rebel in some sort of a way. And in Gaza, that's a very bad thing. It's like a stigma that holds on to you and your family in case you were described this way. So I started to panic. I started to convince him that this is not what I wanted. All I wanted is just to document history as it was being born and buried before our eyes. This is our Gaza, our community, our people. And in a way, I thought that he was convinced. Before we have our closure to that conversation, an airstrike started. We all rushed into the Jeeps. We took off to the destination where the area was targeted. The neighborhood looked so empty, like no one ever existed there. At that point, we were all out of the cars, trying to snap as many pictures as we can, only to realize that the airstrikes started to be on us, and we weren't covering anything anymore. At that point, I turned around and saw my colleagues running away. I joined them. I ran after them. And by the time I got to the car, I knocked on the window because all doors were locked. I asked them to let me in, and no one looked me in the eye but one, the one that I considered a bigger brother to me. And he said, "I don't have time for you." They took off and they left. And at that point, I was struggling with being confused, humiliated, afraid, not knowing what to do. I walked, and I did not know where to go, but eventually, after 4 hours of walking, I found someone who dropped me home. It was a very genuine, nice, kind taxi driver. And as I was weeping, he asked me what happened, and I explained. He asked, why did they do that? I didn't know. So the next day, I decided to go back and confront my colleagues and ask them what happened. Did they not see me? Did they just forgot? Were they joking? And I realized that that was a lesson for me not to be there. They decided at the point that I wasn't listening at all. Maybe this close to life, death experience would teach me a lesson. They were playing Russian roulette with my life. So for the coming week or so, I was not sure if I want to keep doing this or not. I wanted to quit. But at the same time, it kept playing in my head. If they didn't want me there for a week, for 1 week, maybe I can make it for the whole period as long as this lasts. And eventually, I was able to cover 22 days of war with 1 camera, on foot, and a backpack. I wasn't trying to be a rebel, but the people who inspired my unwelcome presence were the people who had faces and names, not just numbers. Those people who were always in my stories, not as subjects, but as storytellers themselves. I was only the messenger who was there to document and show the truth as it is. In my way, I got the pleasure to meet a lot of fascinating women who put my agony of how I was rejected by my colleagues into perspective. This is Sabah. She's the only female surfer we had in Gaza. She was 14 at the time of the photo, and she started to practice this sport with the support of her dad, who's a lifeguard. He used to go with her every day before sunrise and after sunset. And the reason why she would train herself and ride her board at that point is because she didn't want people to see her. Because at that point, she knew that she's gonna be told that this is not the right thing to do, she's a woman, and she's gonna have the whole lecture of why she can't do it. Sabah was amazing. She was talented, she was confident, and she was young. And every time you would ask her something, she would give you an answer that is beyond your imagination. She wanna compete, she wanna go international. At that point, I turned to her dad and I asked him, how could you let her, how could you allow her to get into such a controversial sport, knowing that she might get a lot of harsh feedback from the community. She might be labeled in a very not pleasant way. And he looked at me and he said, she never asked for permission. Next, this is Hana. Hana was 22 in the photo, and Hana had a very conservative family. Her family told her over and over that she can't go to university because in fear that she would get sexually harassed. Sexual harassment does not fall on the person who commit the action. It falls on the person that the action is committed against, in Gaza at least. So if you get sexually harassed, that's on you. You brought shame to the family. And as her family were trying to avoid that, they just thought that sending her to college is just gonna open a door to a lot of things. Instead, she decided that she wanna take classes in karate, and that if she ever gets attacked, she's gonna put that guy into shame. This is one of the most heartbreaking, moving, inspiring stories that I had to document. This is Jamila. She's 30 years old, and Jamila had a big family, as many Gazans. She had 3 brothers, countless number of nephews and nieces, and her mom and dad. Between Hamas and Fatah and the switch that we had between governments, her 3 brothers got killed. None of them were Hamas or Fatah, which are 2 different political movements, and they never get along. But when they tried to switch between the government, a lot of people decided not to. And that resulted a lot of conflict, a lot of armed fighting. And her 3 brothers were victims of that. She had 3 widows, her dad, her mom, and 8 nephews and nieces who needed support. And as she wasn't working herself, she decided to take on the family business of being a construction worker. So she became the first construction worker in Gaza. And she got hired by every major company that existed locally. Not because she's a woman. That was far from why she got hired, but because she was good at what she did. She had her own team. She gathered men who respected her and followed her steps. And in the photo, you can see she was hiding her hair. She was hiding her feminine features as much as possible. Now, navigating the stories of war, between folding and unfolding the layers, seeing these stories, I realized that I was motivated mainly by my frustration. And if I would ever make it as the first female photojournalist in Gaza, it would be because, and not despite, of the surrounding obstacles. Thank you so much.
Could dress up to get love, but guess what? I'm never gonna be that girl who's living in a Barbie world. Could wake up and make up and play dumb, pretending that I need a boy who's gonna treat me like a toy. I know the other girlies wanna wear expensive things like diamond rings, but I don't wanna be the puppet that you're playing on a string. This queen don't need a king. Oh, I don't know what you've been told, but this guy right here's gonna rule the world. Yeah, that is where I'm gonna be, because I wanna be. No, I don't wanna sit still, look pretty. You get off on a 9 to 5 dream of picket fences and trophy wives, but no, I'm never gonna be, cause I don't wanna be. No, I don't wanna sit still, look pretty. Mr. Right could be nice for one night, but then he wanna take control, and I would rather fly solo. The Snow White, she did right in her life, had 7 men to do the chores.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Ambassador Melanne Verveer, Jemiah Wilson, Tina Chen, and Congresswoman Stephanie Murphy.
The only thing a boy's gonna give a girl for free is captivity. And I might love me some vanilla, but I'm not that sugar sweet. Call me HBIC. Oh, I don't know what you've been told, but this guy right here's gonna rule the world. Yeah, that is where I'm gonna be.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's great for me, especially to be back here for my 4th Own It. And I think this year it is truly more important than ever. And we are going to move in significant ways, as you can already tell, from inspiration, as important as it is, and you will get even more, to activism, because that's where it really is. And we really need collectively to move to meaningful change in our world today. So you're going to hear from a fabulous panel. We are the agitators. And I looked up agitate in preparation for this, and I had words like this scream at me: to protest, to campaign, to push, to demonstrate, to drive, to crusade, to fight for, to promote. So you get the idea. We want to talk about all of those things and all of the ways that we can be more engaged to be more effective in this space. So let me start by introducing this extraordinary group. To my far right, Congresswoman Stephanie Murphy. She is one of the good news stories, one of the great good news stories from this last election, and we're really thrilled she's with us today. It's quite a sacrifice on her part. She's the first Vietnamese American elected to Congress, the daughter of refugees, the first in her family to go to college, a businesswoman, an educator, a national security expert who defeated a 24-year incumbent. And she is now representing the 7th District of Florida, Central Florida. And we claim her as a daughter of Georgetown because she has her master's degree in foreign service from here. Tina Chen, she and I belong to a very small exclusive club as former chiefs of staff to a first lady. And she did a great job as assistant to President Obama and as chief of staff to Michelle Obama. She served as the executive director of the White House Council on Women and Girls, which did so much to push the agenda we all care about, and to advance the summit on women that they did in her time there. And she will tell you more about what's happening with that summit going forward. She is a superb lawyer and started in the Obama administration initially as the director for the White House Office of Public Engagement. So she knows a lot about what it takes to be engaged, about the role of advocacy, and has been an activist for many years in her local community, which is Chicago. And then we have wonderful Jamia Wilson, no stranger to any of you, an activist and thought leader on the contemporary feminist movement, widely read and followed on a range of media outlets. She's the executive director of Women, Action, and the Media, a TED Prize storyteller, and a mover and shaker on every list of millennial feminists you can think of that's out there. She is a powerful voice for social and economic justice, for diversity, and for inclusion. Her face, I think, in many ways, is the future of feminism. So that is our great panel. So I want to start with the Congresswoman. I'm going to be very formal because I love saying Congresswoman in terms of your great victory. So you got into politics without really any previous record in politics. In fact, the incumbent, your opponent, was rather condescending in the way that he referred to you as a neophyte. Yesterday, I don't know if any of you saw, there was a big article in the Post about how young women today, and the title was, are moving from the march to a run. From a march to a run. And it is that so many young women want to get engaged in politics, understanding how critically important it is. And we have a workshop today that Jamia is going to be involved in called Running for Office. So you are now someone who has done it, who has mustered the courage, who has made the plunge. What did it take? What motivated you? Because in many ways, it is a truly significant way to be a change maker, to be engaged in politics.
Well, I think, the decision to run for public office is never an easy one, and it's never one specific thing. But last election cycle, I was listening to this rhetoric that was happening at the national level that just didn't comport with the America I knew. And then, and I had been in conversations with the Democratic Party about helping them find somebody to run in this seat. And they had asked me if I wanted to run, and my initial response was no, thank you, and I'll help you find somebody. But then the election continued on, getting more and more hateful. And in June, somebody walked into a nightclub in my community and took 49 lives. And to me, it felt like words have power, and we were seeing the manifestation of the dysfunction and the hatred that we had been hearing during this election, and that's how it felt to me. And I felt a call to service, that we had to change the way that we did things in Washington if we wanted to change this country. And I thought a lot about, well, gosh, I don't want to run because people are going to say bad things about me. It's hard. I have a 6-year-old son and a 3-year-old little girl. And at the end of the day, I did it because I want them to see me as an example of somebody who isn't afraid to do what I know I'm capable of doing. I had the opportunity to do it, and I wasn't going to be held back by what other people thought about me or were going to say about me.
And how has it been?
It's been great. As you all know, it's an interesting time here in Washington. There's a proverb that says, "May we live in interesting times," and I start to wonder whether that's a blessing or a curse. But it's been great. It's a real honor to be able to serve.
And I think that the Congresswoman, Stephanie, is really a role model in so many ways, but she's also a mom with 2 young children. And she is managing to do this, not without difficulty. So hopefully you are a trailblazer. You're already a trailblazer, but one in which you will blaze the trail for so many other young women like those in this room. Tina, you've been involved in politics, not elective politics, but...
What a long time. You and I are
but grassroots politics, activism, really the kinds of things that will enable us to create change because it needs to percolate up. What have you discovered through those years of effort? What is most needed, and what are the lessons for today?
Oh, no. Great question. And I love being on a panel called Agitate, I have to say, with Melanne Verveer. It's so fabulous. So, real. One of the things I said to my staff, actually, the day after the election, which was really hard for all of us, and you can imagine, for those of us in the White House. And I said, look, I have been doing this work for 40 years, and only the last 8 of it in that building. And because change doesn't happen in that building, and it doesn't happen in Washington, it really does happen on the grassroots. Change happens in people's living rooms, in people's schools, in school boards, on state legislatures, and we, especially we as progressives, need to get back to that. We've sort of lost that thread. That's why we have lost so many state houses, and we've lost so many governorships, and we need to get them back, and we need to get them back before redistricting happens after 2020. But we also need to get them back because so many things that affect people's lives are happening at the local level. Whether there's enough funding for a domestic violence shelter, whether the police are responding to sexual assault correctly, whether what's happening in our schools for our trans kids can be affected not just through federal policy, but by agitating in your local school district to protect trans kids who are in school. And that's something that we need really to get back to. And not only is it where change happens, but it's where people can see results. it's enormously rewarding. And I've made the best friends of my life. I mean, my lifetime friends from doing that work. So it is personally rewarding, it's inspiring, and you will really change people's lives by getting involved, in each, group where you are in your school district, on your campus. I know Georgetown is a great It's On Us campus, supporting the fight against campus sexual assault, doing that kind of work.
And what about the summit? Is it going grassroots?
Yes. So for those of you who remember, last June, we held the first ever United States of Women Summit here in Washington, 5,000 women on all of the issues that we worked on in the Obama administration. We kept that name, the United States of Women, in a 501c3 called Civic Nation, and UnitedStatesOfWomen.org has really taken off, and it is now, a voice at the grassroots, so reaching women across the country who may not understand what Title IX is or know exactly what Planned Parenthood does, but they care about women and girls. And you saw that momentum through the March momentum. There are a lot of people in red states everywhere who just don't like the rhetoric that we're hearing, care about what's happening to women and girls, don't know what to do. So United States of Women is reaching all of those folks and then providing a national voice and doing it in service of all of the groups in the middle of the sandwich, as I like to call it. So in service of Planned Parenthood and National Women's Law Center and the Domestic Violence Coalition is really to serve those groups, give them a greater base and voice and a greater national voice. We had 57,000 people from across the country on a call that we did just before the town hall week. And they were calling in from Iowa, from Texas, from Florida, they're from all over the country, and that's where we need to reach them. So Jordan Brooks, I don't know if Jordan's out there, there's stand up Jordan. Jordan Brooks is the managing director of the United States of Women. You can tell this is an organization run by millennials. It is totally. And so Jordan will be on a breakout later on this afternoon, but really join us to get active on this. We'll hold the summit again, TBD, watch for the announcement on that later on this year. But in the meantime, we're gonna be out there across the country in your local spots, and we're actually hoping people will take ownership and act locally.
Good. So Jimmy, I mentioned you're gonna do this breakout on running for office. Let me put you on the spot.
Uh-oh.
Is running for office in your plans?
Woo! It is something that after the day I will now call 11-9, I have decided that I want to do. The question is where and when, but it's something that I pledge to you will happen in my lifetime, God willing.
Now, I know many of you read her writings and follow them closely. I was particularly taken by the one she did on the march because she talked about the fact that she really wasn't sure she was going to be in the march. And then her mom basically said to her, "Get ready, we're going." Thank God for moms. And she discovered in the process that it was one of those extraordinary moments in her young life. And you have written a lot about the need for us to really focus on what was mentioned at the outset of Own It, this intersectionality. When the march was being conceived, there was a sense that it wasn't inclusive, that it really didn't make place for everybody. And I wonder, you've written about it, you've talked about it, you've thought about it, it's some place where you find yourself being a real leader in terms of creating that kind of inclusion among women. Tell us how you see that today and why it's more important than ever.
So thank you for bringing my mom into this space, because I very much feel her, and that's the first intersectional feminist who taught me about why it is my duty to do this work, and that it's the rent that I pay to be a part of this human population. Intersectionality, to me, is very similar to the concept of Ubuntu. Have people heard about Ubuntu? It's a Southern African concept, one of the most oldest concepts of time, that basically is, I am because you are, because we all are. Intersectionality recognizes all of the layers of our identities and recognizes that they're all inextricably connected. And so there cannot be liberation for one of us if there's not liberation for all of us. So the way that I look at my feminism and
the kind of feminism that I work to espouse, because I'm a perfectly flawed human, as we all are, is a feminism where when Black, disabled, trans people are free, the poorest Black, disabled, trans person is free in this world, then I will be free. And so that is why I will use every fiber of my being and understanding. Thank you. To help make change on those systems that impact the most marginalized people's lives. And that is what intersectionality is all about, and that is why there was controversy around how the march was being framed. What were the principles that we were coming together about? Really digging into some age-old issues we've had in movements. I think one of the things to me that was making it so that I was reluctant to go is that I was a part of Pantsuit Nation online, and I was getting really upset about some of the rhetoric I was seeing in that space that was not intersectional, where people were excluding the lives and the layered experiences of many people of color and also our global sisters around the world. And seeing that actually led me to think about, okay, this is an opportunity for us to speak out about the messiness of the movements, some of which we have inherited as a generation and then some of which we continue to perpetuate because we've been conditioned to do so. And what does that mean about us showing up and participating? And it really came back to this idea for me that was, okay, this march isn't perfect. But if I sit home and I stay home, that doesn't mean that that's going to change. It's going to go forth and other folks will get to define what feminism is. Other folks will get to define what the resistance is, and my voice will not be counted. And that is ultimately what my mom helped me see in my visceral reaction, which was that a lot of times we have to see the long game. And it's not always the most comfortable place to be, but for me, the long game is the reality that intersectional feminism has been a concept that's been around for a long time. There were feminists of color who were talking about this before I was born. Audre Lorde was saying that we don't lead single issue lives before I was born. And now it's something that we're hearing in the mainstream, that media is talking about it in the mainstream, and it's in the tagline of this conference. So I think it's really important for us to acknowledge and name where those divisions are and to engage in real talk about the messiness we have, but not sit out. I think when we sit out, we are giving our opponents a gift. Instead, it's about really getting at those fissures and the gray areas and the parts that make us uncomfortable and facing them head on.
Good advice. Let me ask both of you, you know, one of the things that's often said is that we women don't stand up for each other, that we're often a big part of the problem of really going at issues in a greater united way. Now, obviously, women are not monolithic. We all have different views. But, you know, so many times when I travel around the world, women come together across really difficult situations on both sides of a conflict, for example, or in other ways, and they will always say what they discovered. We have more things in common than separate us. How can we do a better job at really, you know, women, the members of Congress, Congresswoman, from time to time, have crossed that dividing line, Republican, Democrat, and made progress on violence against women or Title IX or so many of the other things that then the guys have come together to follow. Do you have advice, both of you, as to how we can better come together? Because our agitation would be far more effective.
Well, one of the things I think, and it's hard to do right now, you know, it's especially hard since everything is so polarized. And you get critiqued if you reach across the aisle, right? You know, if you've got something that looks like you're giving an olive branch right now to the other side, everybody piles on to say, no, it's resistance only. You know, we can't do that. But I agree. I mean, I think there are going to be moments, and there may well be moments in Congress, right, where something is going to come out where they, you know, we actually, in order to benefit poor women, you know, in order to sort of save some programming, you know, we're going to have to make some compromises. And in a polarized field where we know there's some principles we have to stand up for, compromise is hard to talk about. and it's hard to lead on because it's so much easier to lead to the base. And you see that happening right now, right? It is just so much easier to go to your corners, gin up your base, and just stay there. But we know if everybody's in their corners, nothing positive is going to happen. And that's going to take us on this side of the aisle, to have the courage and to respect folks who will take a courageous step forward to do something that will be important. Now, we will never compromise on our values, but you can compromise to do things, to do programming, to do, if we want to save, I can't believe they cut all the funding for homeless veterans, right? And in addition to everything else they're cutting, if that's something that we can come together on to save, homeless veterans from being on the streets, then maybe that's a place, and we will save people's lives in there. And at the same time, though, I think we've got to do it in a way that is true to our values and is still continuing to speak out. But it's hard to do.
And I think about so many of the pressing issues, just in terms, call them women's issues, but they're really about the kind of America we want to see. Childcare. We've got so many women in the workplace today, and you're an example, Congresswoman, who are struggling with a young family, and yet we have so little support. Parental leave policies, the only industrialized country in the world that doesn't have paid parental leave. Issues having to do with equal pay. I mean, clearly, how do we create that united collective to enable us to make progress on these issues? And there's so many others, obviously.
So I hear a lot from my base, this idea that, in the last, when we had a Democratic president, the Republicans didn't play along, so why are you talking bipartisanship now? They didn't give that grace to us previously. And I try to explain to them that, politics is not a zero-sum game. If you identify places where you can be bipartisan, does not mean that my voice is going to be silenced in areas where I completely and totally disagree. You are able to do both, but you have to do it with a level of respect so that you can continue to have the conversation. And so what I'm seeing and what we're trying to do in Congress is I'm going to start a Women in National Security Caucus.
Great.
And so I think that's an area where...
Count us in.
That's right.
That's an area where we should be able to find common ground. And in those family issues that you mentioned, paid family leave, and just the kind of support that recognizes that we don't live in the 1950s anymore. And so what kinds of transformations do we need to make as a society to acknowledge that women have advanced a lot and are working in the workforce, and how do we support these families as they have both parents in the workforce? But we have to do it with a level of respect and the willingness to give in some areas and take in others.
And I want to go back to the point about grassroots too, because we've seen great progress when we got stymied in Congress during our term on paid leave, and paid sick days. We went to state and local, so we've got like 38 states and local jurisdictions that have passed some form, of sick leave or paid family leave, and that's because those representatives are really right with their families. They're living on those blocks, they're serving there, they see the issues, and I think the more we can continue to build that momentum at the local level, that's, Congress has a tendency to follow as opposed to lead, right? So that work in building up what happens, and you can often, it's easier to work a little bit more in that bipartisan atmosphere locally because you're living right next door to each other. You're living in the same school district. You're living in the same congressional district. You're shopping at the same stores. And that can help build. And I think it will move our progressive agenda to do that because, all right, I believe our bullshit. We have a better way of organizing the way people should live and the way people should work, and it's more profitable and it's more responsive to the lives we need to lead in the 21st century, and we can prove that by the work that we're doing locally.
We want to bring our wonderful audience into this conversation, and I was handed a couple of questions that were filled out, and I really, goes to the heart of an issue I know that is a big one. How do you combat the feeling of burnout in your work? What gives you the strength to keep pushing forward? Obviously, there are a lot of setbacks in the movement. What gives you that sense of strength that keeps you going. You know, Harriet Tubman going through all of those tunnels for the liberation of her people, her mantra was keep going, keep going, keep going. How do you keep going?
For me, it's community. That having a community of people who I know have my back and I have theirs tremendously helps. That I can recognize that everything doesn't have to be on my back. That maybe society might have conditioned people to believe that it does. but by actively engaging in loving boundary setting has been a new thing for me. That's been great. Using no lovingly as well as community, and also really asking. I know Amanda Palmer has written that book, The Art of Asking, but asking for the support that I need to move forward has really helped. And I think with the burnout piece as well, it's really important to talk about it. So our foremothers had the consciousness raising groups where they were talking about all sorts of different issues in their lives, personal as political. But I believe that it's really important for us to have these conversations because we often live in such isolation and fear and sadness, feeling like we're all alone and we have to carry things by ourselves. And when we saw that beautiful protest at Columbia around the sexual assaults there, where the other young women were carrying the weight of the mattress from the young woman who was raped on campus and was not given the respect and support she deserved, that right through her graduation, helping her carry that weight to the next stage of her life, really sits to me as the metaphor for what we need to do for each other, to do what Assata Shakur called on us to do, which is to love and protect and to care for each other in our resistance.
So one of the things our former First Lady and we used to talk about, what she used to say, when, if I ever get tired, so put me in front of a bunch of kids. But it's actually true. I mean, one of the ways I get a lot of energy back and strength back is to mentor and to talk to young people. And, being here with all of you is enormously energizing to those of us because you are carrying that on, and it is so encouraging to us to see all of you take these issues on and move them forward even more. But more than that, even going into your local high school, some of the young people that we met, over the last 8 years, who we changed their lives by just sitting with them for 2 hours, and talking to them and giving them a sense of themselves and empowering them. And you can do that yourselves. There's always someone younger than you, or hasn't really learned the issues, or is struggling themselves, and reaching down and helping them up in very small ways is enormously, just feels good, is gratifying, but you will get more out of that interaction, I always do, than I wind up putting into it, and that fuels the pump.
I think for me, my constituents are what drive me to keep putting one step forward and pushing hard, even though it's a grueling schedule, because many of them are not in a place where they'll be able to survive the changes to the healthcare system, or, if there are cuts in various services, this is going to have a significant impact on their lives. So I'm motivated by them. But the one thing I will say, and it's been one of these things that's hard to do, you receive the advice, but it's hard to do, is that every one of you are working really hard towards something, right? And you have the potential of burnout as well. But you need to take the time to invest in yourself as well. And that means taking, whatever it is that helps you re-energize, you need to stop and find the time to do that, because that allows you to be better for whatever cause or whatever it is that you're working towards. And I know that's advice easily given, a little harder to actually do, given some of the lives that we have, but I think it's really important.
I would also say pick the things that are important, which as a working mom you find out. As a single working mom I did. So my favorite story on that one is that for years, like literally actually for 15 years, I had a hole in my second floor bathroom. Once we had to fix the plumbing and there was a leak, and then, and it was like, it's the second floor bathroom. Nobody ever sees the second floor bathroom. We're leaving the hole in there because that's one thing I just don't have the time to fix, but I don't really have to fix it, and I'm not going to judge myself for the fact that I have a hole in the second floor bathroom. So pick the things that are really important and spend time on them.
That's probably the most innovative advice I've heard. But speaking of advice, this is an issue, and we're coming to the end of this panel, regretfully. But what is the best advice you've gotten? And what advice do you have for these remarkable people here today? Maybe it's the same advice you got. Maybe it's different advice based on your own experience. But what is it that helped you that you can put forward to them?
So when I was thinking about running for election, it was in the context of a lot of negative stories about immigrants and refugees. And I thought, do I really have the strength to put myself out there and tell my story in the process of running for public office? And my brother's advice to me was to own my story and to see the value in the story and know that it can provide inspiration for others and to have the courage to do that. So I would say to all of you, own your story.
Own it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
That's good.
You know, and mine, you know, it's something like our moms, you know, or all moms are great on this. And, you know, my mother was always one, growing up as an, you know, Asian kid in Cleveland when there was like maybe 6 other Asians in the whole east side of Cleveland. You know, and so there was a lot of, you know, the kind of attitude you would get from folks, and they wouldn't know who you are, and that, you know, it's sort of what happens now online in terms of the questions and the commenting and the bullying that goes on online. And my mother was really good about look past it. You know, do not let that get into your head. Trust yourself. And look past all of the negativity and the comments and the haters and the folks who are out there. Because know yourself, and much like you said, own your story, but trust that. And look past, you know, all of those commenters and really do not let them get into your head. And I actually can't stress this strongly enough because I think it's so much easier now to get that as you're looking down your Twitter feed. Like, I never look at the comments on my Twitter feed. You know,
right.
I'm just putting it out there and people can deal with it. You know, it is, so look past that and retain, you know, believe in yourself and continue to believe in yourself.
So this is one that my dad answered to me when I was having some real existential crises around work and trying to figure out what I was going to do, where I was going to move, and decisions I had to make. And some of you might know this one, so you can join with me on this. You got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, know where to run. You never count your money while you're sitting at the table. There'll be time enough for counting when the dealing's done.
Kenny would love this. Kenny Rogers at the Onan Conference. I love that.
How extraordinary. A brother, a mother, a dad.
Right.
You know, so maybe the good advice is also to listen to your family.
Absolutely.
When they're encouraging, maybe not when they're trying to discourage you. But what a remarkable group of women.
I heard that song on the way in.
And for those of you who are wondering where Imani is, she will be on the panel this afternoon. So she is going to be here as well. And I can't thank these great women enough on behalf of all of us. And I just want us to remind ourselves that if we want to see change in the world, we have to be that change. So it's our moment.